All right, so ready to dive in. We're tackling a book today called The Four Agreements. And yeah, no, it sounds a little self-helpy, maybe even like one seminar away from selling you some life-changing crystals. But hear me out.
Well, the title certainly grabs your attention.
Right, you see a title like that and it's like, okay, what am I not doing in my life? But what's really interesting here is Don Miguel Ruiz, he's not just, throwing out some trendy self-help tips. He's going way back, drawing on this ancient Toltec wisdom and presenting these agreements as like a whole way of life.
It's true, he presents it as a path to personal freedom. And that's what's so fascinating, I think. It's not just about feeling a bit better every day, but really like fundamentally changing how we see ourselves, how we interact with the world.
Yeah, like Ruiz talks about how we all kind of get domesticated as we grow up, We accept these limitations, these fears that might not even be true to who we really are.
Exactly. We pick up these beliefs, who knows where they come from, childhood, society, and we carry them around as if they are precious.
Right, like those souvenirs you get on vacation that end up just cluttering your house.
Exactly. But what if those beliefs, they're actually holding us back? Like what if they're preventing us from being truly happy, truly free?
Okay, so then what do we do?
That's where the four agreements come in like keys, unlocking a freer, more authentic way of being.
I like that. Keys. So let's unlock agreement number one, which honestly might be the most powerful one of the bunch. Be impeccable with your
Oh,
word.
it's a big one.
Right. And I know what you're thinking. Just don't be rude, right?
Yeah.
Like common courtesy, I got this. But Ruiz goes so much deeper than that.
Think of it this way. Words, they have this incredible power to shape reality. And not just our own reality, but the reality of those around us. Ruiz, he actually compares them to magic, this force that can create or destroy.
Wow. Okay, so words as magic spells.
In a way, yeah. And he uses some pretty heavy examples to illustrate this point. He even talks about, like, Hitler showing how words fueled by hate can have these, well, devastating consequences on a global scale,
Yeah, I mean, I get chills just thinking about that.
right? But then he brings it down to earth with these examples that I think we can all relate to.
A little more, shall we say, day to day.
Exactly. Like the casual comment that just crushes a child's spirit,
Yeah.
you know? Or the way gossip, even if we think it's harmless, it spreads negativity like wildfire.
Totally. It's so easy to get caught up in that kind of stuff without realizing the damage it can do.
Right. And I think those everyday examples, that's where the true power of this agreement really hits home. It's not about some grand gestures. It's the little things we say and how they ripple outwards.
It's like that butterfly effect thing, right? One tiny flap of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane on the other side of the world.
It's a good way to think about it. So with our words, we really have to ask ourselves, what kind of ripples am I creating?
So then how do we actually live this agreement? Because let's be real, none of us are perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we're human, right?
Yeah.
We're going to make mistakes.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being.
It's about awareness and intention. It starts with that inner dialogue we have, that inner critic, the one that loves to point out our flaws.
Oh, I know that voice all too well.
Imagine replacing that voice with one of encouragement, self-love,
Okay, that sounds way nicer.
right? That's what it means to be impeccable with your word towards yourself, because often we're our own worst critics.
Oh, 100%.
So instead of beating ourselves up, what if we choose words of kindness and support? Talk to ourselves the way we talk to a good friend, encourage ourselves.
That's a good point. We're usually way more compassionate with our friends than we are with ourselves.
Exactly. And when we start treating ourselves with that level of respect, it naturally extends outwards. It changes how we interact with others.
Makes sense. So it's kind of like this ripple effect, but in a positive way. We start by being impeccable with our words towards ourselves, and then that ripples out to how we communicate with everyone else.
Exactly.
We're less likely to speak harshly or thoughtlessly because we're coming from a place of self-love. Makes sense. All right, that was agreement number one. So agreement number two, don't take anything personally. This one, let me tell you, easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, who hasn't been like totally thrown off by a rude comment or even just like a friend's bad mood?
It's so easy to internalize that stuff.
Right, like it must be about me somehow.
It's human nature to personalize things, totally.
Mm.
But Ruiz, he has this amazing way of shifting our perspective.
Okay, how so?
He says we all live in our own little movie, right? Our own reality shaped by our experiences, beliefs.
Okay, so like we're all the stars of our own show.
Exactly. And so when someone, says something hurtful or does something that we don't like, it's usually a reflection of their movie, not ours.
So it's like they're the director, the actors, the whole production crew, and we've just wandered onto their set.
Exactly. We just happen to walk by. It's not actually about us.
Ah, that's such a relief.
Right. And I think that's such a freeing realization because it doesn't excuse their behavior, but it allows us to detach,
Yeah.
detach from that emotional roller coaster of taking it personally. And then we can choose to respond with compassion.
So it's like building this, I don't know, emotional shield of armor. So we can deflect all those negative
I
vibes.
love that emotional shield of armor. That's great.
Right. It's like, nope, not today. But okay, seriously, how do we actually put that into practice, especially when it's like someone we're close to, and like those buttons are easier to push.
Right, because we care.
Yes.
And that's where the work comes in, right? It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond.
Yeah.
Ruiz actually, he uses this word mitote to describe like the chaotic chatter of the mind, this whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. And when we take things personally, we're letting someone else's mitote invade our own.
So it's like their crazy infects our crazy.
In a way, yeah. It's like their stuff becomes our stuff, but we can choose not to let it in.
Okay, how do we do that? Because I feel like most of the time, I'm not even aware it's happening until after the fact. It's like, oh, now I'm in a bad mood and I don't even know why.
It's about, catching ourselves in that moment. Instead of just instantly reacting, take a breath. Ask ourselves, is this really about me? Or is it about what's going on in their movie?
Okay, so pause, take a breath, and ask, is this my circus or are these my monkeys?
Exactly. And, sometimes it might be our circus, our monkeys, but often it's not. And then we can choose a different path, a path that leads to, greater inner peace, stronger relationships.
I like that path a lot better. Okay, so that's 2 agreements down, 2 to go. And this next one, it's all about clearing up communication breakdowns. Don't make assumptions. I feel like this is the source of like 90% of arguments, misunderstandings, you name it.
Oh, absolutely. Because, we tend to fill in the blanks with our own interpretations, our own fears, our own insecurities, rather than, just seeking clarity.
It's so much easier to just make up a story in our heads, right?
Right. Ruiz, he gives this brilliant example in the book about relationships where, partners assume they know each other's needs without ever actually communicating.
Oh, tell me about it. I once got into this, like, huge fight with my best friend because I just assumed she was mad at me. Turns out she was just having a stressful day at work. It had nothing to do with me.
You see, that's the danger of assumptions, right? They create these whole narratives in our heads that often have very little to do with reality, and then we react based on those narratives.
And then it just creates, like, a whole big mess.
Exactly. More drama, more conflict, totally unnecessary.
Okay, so what's the solution? What do we do instead of building a case in our heads?
We ask.
It's that simple. Just ask.
It sounds simple, but it's really about shifting from a place of, fear and control to a place of curiosity and openness. Instead of assuming you know what someone's thinking, why not just ask?
It's like that old saying, when in doubt, ask it out.
Right, except in this case, it's more like, when in doubt, ask about it.
Like that. When in doubt, ask about it. So instead of letting our imaginations run wild, agreement number 3 challenges us to be more direct, to seek understanding, and honestly just avoid those messy communication traps.
Exactly. It's about choosing clear communication over, well, mind reading, which, let's be honest, very few of us are actually good at.
Speaking of things we might not be good at, agreement number 4, this one feels like it could be a bit of a pressure cooker. Always do your best.
Okay, before we trigger anyone's inner perfectionist, can we clarify what your best actually means in this context? Well, and that's the thing about this whole journey, right? There's no, final destination. It's not like you reach freedom and then everything's perfect.
So it's not like climbing Mount Everest. You don't get to the top and plant your flag and you're done.
Exactly. It's more about the ongoing process.
Yeah.
Growing, shedding those old layers, and just, stepping more fully into who you really are.
Okay, so maybe it's more like exploring a vast forest. I don't know, like there are always new paths to discover, new challenges to overcome, even like new depths to explore within ourselves.
I love that analogy because it's true, right? As we explore that inner landscape, we start to experience more freedom, more joy, more love, just more of everything in our lives.
And it's not just contained to us, right? It's like it ripples outwards. It impacts our relationships, our work, how we interact with everyone.
It changes everything.
So it's not just about feeling better, it's about creating a better world.
We got it. Ruiz talks about creating, and I know this sounds a little out there, but he talks about creating heaven on earth. And I'll admit, the first time I read that, I was like, okay, is this like a utopia where everyone's walking around with halos?
Yeah.
But that's not what he means at all.
What does he mean?
He's talking about a world where we relate to ourselves and each other with just more kindness, more compassion, more authenticity.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. But how do we get there? How do we even begin to create that kind of world? Because let's be real, there's a lot of negativity out there, a lot of division.
It feels overwhelming sometimes.
Totally.
But it starts with each of us. It starts with questioning those old agreements, the ones that tell us we're separate, that we're in competition with each other. It's about recognizing that at our core, we're all connected.
So it's like that whole be the change you want to see in the world thing?
Exactly. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix things
Right.
or for some external circumstance to change. We have to take responsibility for our own thoughts, words, and actions.
Because even those small acts of kindness can make a difference.
100%. They have this ripple effect.
I love that. So even if we can't solve all the world's problems, we can choose to approach our own lives, our own interactions, just from a more loving, more conscious place. And maybe, just maybe, that can inspire someone else to do the same.
Exactly. And that's how we start to shift the collective consciousness. One person, one interaction, one act of kindness at a time.
Okay, that feels really empowering. So let's be practical here. How do we actually live these agreements, not just like intellectually understand them?
Right. Because it's not enough to just read the book,
Yeah.
right? We have to put it into practice. And I think the key is to start small. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight.
So no need to join a monastery or anything?
No monastery is required. Maybe just choose one agreement to focus on each week, or even just each day.
Okay, so instead of trying to do everything at once, I can just start with like being more mindful of my words, or maybe pausing before I react to something someone says.
Exactly. Just small, manageable steps. And remember, you're going to mess up. You're going to fall back into old patterns.
And so it's not about being perfect.
Not at all. It's about progress. Those mistakes, they're just opportunities for learning and growth.
I like that, reframing those failures as opportunities.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Ruiz talks about the importance of having a spiritual practice, of connecting to something greater than yourself.
And that can look like so many different things,
Yeah.
right? It's not necessarily about organized religion.
Not at all. It's about finding what helps you connect to that sense of peace, of purpose, of belonging.
So whether it's meditation, spending time in nature, journaling, creative expression, anything that helps you tap into that deeper part of yourself.
Exactly.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the 4 agreements, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
That you are worthy. You are worthy of love, of happiness, of freedom, just as you are. You have the power to create a life that reflects that. It starts with questioning those old agreements, those limiting beliefs, and it continues by embracing these 4 agreements.
Being impeccable with our word, not taking anything personally, not making assumptions, and always doing our best. It's about stepping into our power, embracing who we really are, and just creating a life and a world that's filled with more love, more joy, more freedom.
Beautifully said. And remember, as Ruiz says, heaven on earth is possible. It starts with each of us.
That's an incredible message to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the 4 agreements. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep believing in the possibility of a brighter future.